Good morning from War on My Country. I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. Today's episode's going to deal with grief. Not over people, although we are affected. Not for a TV character or a pet. Today we're dealing with grief for something that is much, much bigger. Because quite a few of us are experiencing sadness that feels very much like loss because of the environment. It's even been given a name. So just warning you, we will be feeling a bit sad today. If you're not up for it, I totally understand. Sometimes you need to be in the right frame of mind to deal with big feelings. But stick around to see what's been happening while you're sleeping first. It's Thursday, August 13. One Nation MP Barnaby Joyce has distanced his party from comments made by a former candidate who says he believes being gay is a mental illness. Parminder Singh, who ran in WA in the 2025 election, made the comments on a podcast where he also said that children become gay because their parents work too much and that no one is born gay. Barnaby Joyce, speaking to the ABC, said that people are allowed to have views but that they have to be within the Australian guardrails, saying One Nation is one of the gayest parties in Australia, that the party has a large proportion of gay people who don't want to be glorified or vilified. Mr Singh's profile has now been removed from the One Nation website. 2 Australians are among hundreds who have been rescued from a ferry that caught on fire off the coast of Bali. The ferry was heading to the island of Lombok when the fire broke out, forcing the 211 passengers to jump into the ocean. They were rescued by Navy ships, patrol boats and a helicopter. Sadly, a 19-year-old Indonesian girl died in the incident. Coalition frontbenchers Ted O'Brien and James Patterson have written to the Australian Federal Police requesting an investigation into how a letter from the Japanese government to the Australian government was leaked. The letter is a response to Melongate, where Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, speaking on a podcast that aired back in July, mentioned Japanese Prime Minister Sane Takachi had gifted him crown melons during a recent visit to Australia, saying she brought 2 and they're beautiful, while making a gesture with both hands in front of his chest. Coverage of the podcast led to Tokyo writing to Albanese, saying they believed the reporting in the Australian media had been sensationalised and that no further action would be taken. The letter was then leaked to several media outlets. Calls from the opposition to apologise for the comments have been dismissed by the Prime Minister. The head of the World Health Organization says the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo is on track to surpass the deadliest in history. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told reporters that with the outbreak already taking the lives of more than 2,000 people, it's already considered to be the fastest growing in history. It's outpacing the 2014 to 2016 outbreak that had at least 28,000 recorded cases and took the lives of 11,000 people. There are reports that Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, or ICE agents in the US, are about to be outfitted with gloves that administer electric shocks. The gloves are designed to deliver the painful shocks likened to a bee sting as a de-escalation tactic when agents are confronted with uncooperative individuals. ICE agents have been linked to several deaths of American citizens in recent times who were shot and killed while trying to intervene in or witness raids where people are rounded up and taken into detention centres. The manufacturer warns the device should not be used on children, pregnant women, the elderly or people with a disability. Argentinian soccer star Lionel Messi may be signalling the end of his playing career following the death of his father. The 39-year-old took to Instagram after the passing of his dad, writing, "I don't know how to carry on. I used to just play football and now I'm really not sure if I'll carry on doing it for much longer." Jorge Messi, who acted as his son's agent for most of his career, died on Saturday after a long illness. Lionel writing about his sadness at not being able to bring the World Cup home to show him, saying, "You were by my side from the beginning. There was so little left until the end. Why couldn't you hold on just a little longer so we could finish it together?" Those are today's top stories. If you're stepping off here, have a great day. We'll catch you again tomorrow. If you are ready to handle some big feels though, next, there's a term for the way you might feel about the world right now. We're going to explore ecological grief. I recently rewatched the TV series The Newsroom. If you haven't watched it, it's about a group of people who run a US cable television news department. The anchor, Will McAvoy, played by Jeff Daniels, who I understand is actually in the country right now, filming somewhere in Sydney, in Season 3 interviews the deputy head of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Authority, about a report they've just completed on the state of the climate.
What would all this look like?
Well, mass migrations, food and water shortages, spread of deadly disease, endless wildfires, way too many to keep under control, and storms that have the power to level cities, blacken out the sky, and create permanent darkness.
Are you going to get in trouble for saying this publicly?
That is, of course, from a TV show and not a scientific report, but in a case of art imitating life, it's hard not to draw parallels in this moment. We've watched on recently from down under as our friends in Europe, the US and Canada have been battling wildfires, something we used to think was an almost exclusively Australian problem. We've also just watched as report after report is coming in of yet another bird colony being struck down by the deadly H5 bird flu. If you are across what happened when it spread in areas like South America, you'll know that it can decimate not just bird populations, both wild and domestic, but other sea animals too, like seals. There are already more than 200 confirmed cases across the country. Royal shows in Adelaide and Melbourne have cancelled their poultry competitions and exhibitions as farmers lock their birds down. Experts are warning us that they can't stop it from spreading through wild bird populations, and that means it won't just be seabirds soon. Let's be honest, we've experienced plenty of overwhelming news in the past 10 years. But a couple of Aussie researchers have been looking into something that is unique amongst them, something that causes a phenomenon they're calling ecological grief. One of them is Chloe Waterfin. She's a senior research associate in the Vitalities Lab at the Centre for Social Research in Health and the Social Policy Research Centre. She's also a postdoctoral fellow in the AKT Lab at the Black Dog Institute and a conjoint lecturer in the UNSW School of Population Health. Chloe, welcome to the Solo Bureau.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
First of all, can you please walk us through exactly what ecological grief is by your definition?
Yeah, so ecological grief is really how we as humans respond to the loss of a place, species, an ecosystem, or even a particular being who might not be human. And so there are a range of kind of emotional responses we might have to that, which can all be part of the grief that we feel. Most commonly, and probably what most people would think would be sadness, like a deep sadness at that loss. But we might also feel anger about the thing that has caused the loss. We might also feel joy while we're remembering our connection to that place, that country, or that species. So all of these things can come into grief.
You spoke to hundreds of people in the process of doing this research. What were some of the more common feelings that these people shared when it came to dealing with climate-related emotions? What experiences were they going through?
Yeah, so I've spoken to many, many people, and my co-author Claudia Benham from the University of Queensland has also spoken to many, many people. And together that's across many different projects with many different regions or ecosystems that have been affected and where we're experiencing loss. But there are some common threads. People do feel a deep sense of sadness and a sense of kind of nostalgia, I suppose, as well. The environmental philosopher Glenn Albrecht coined the term solastalgia to describe a feeling of kind of distress that we might have when we see places or species or beings that we love being destroyed or damaged. And it's kind of a nostalgia for the solace that we can find in the natural world as it's increasingly being threatened. And that's definitely something that we've both heard through the conversations we've had as part of our research, and also through the conversations I've facilitated as a climate cafe facilitator.
And I don't know how in-depth that research was, but when you're speaking to Australians, are there environmental things happening that we are all commonly referring back to? Is it seeing the loss of something like the Great Barrier Reef? Is it seeing potentially the loss of a certain species of animal? Is there a common thread of exactly what it is Australians are the most concerned about?
Yeah, so definitely the reef. So both of us, both Claudia and myself, are actually based up in Queensland. I live on the Great Barrier Reef. So we've definitely been kind of listening to people who are feeling really worried about the reef, who have witnessed bleaching and who have witnessed other impacts on the reef. For example, when floodwaters kind of smother the reef after the major flooding we've had up here. But another big thing that has really shook the core of Australians was the big bushfire season referred to as the Black Summer, but we know it extended further than that back in 2019, 2020, where we witnessed mega fires destroying beloved bushland and rainforest, but also the death of a huge number of animals. And of course, threats to human existence and a lot of loss of homes. So that definitely comes up a lot in the stories and the emotions people share related to ecological grief and loss.
It does feel like, while we are already experiencing loss, it feels like we're maybe on the edge of really big loss, like great loss. But how similar or maybe different is this kind of feeling that we are having when we're watching the environment suffer before our eyes to, say, the loss of a loved one? Like, is it a same or similar grief?
There's definitely similarities. And one core similarity is, I guess, the importance of not pathologizing the feelings of grief. You know, they're an important part of us reckoning with how much we love the human or non-human that's been lost. I suppose the difference is that we don't have very strong cultural or social practices for recognizing the loss of the environment. We have more so for human loss, but I'd say as kind of contemporary Western society, that's still a challenge. We often find it hard to talk about death and to kind of process grief in a healthy way. Really hard for the people going through it, but also hard to know how to support. And that's, I guess, even more so when it's grief for the environment, where people might not find that they also grieve. So it can be isolating. Yeah, there's not necessarily the practices in place. There's not the forms of remembrance that we might have for human life.
Well, then that obviously brings us to discussions around First Nations Australians, because they obviously do have cultural and spiritual practices that grieve country as well as humans. And they have been experiencing that grief now for hundreds of years from the beginning of colonisation. Do we have lessons to learn from First Nations Australians about how to cope with this?
We absolutely have lessons to learn, and we also have to approach that with a great deal of humility and a great deal of respect for the spaces and the community's own grief and suffering and struggles. But as we mentioned in the article, there are some amazing organisations like We Are Lee who do offer online programs or other forms of ceremony or practices that they invite all Australians or all people to attend to get a sense of some of the traditions that can help us process grief for more than human kin.
Are there support networks outside of that that deal with ecological grief?
Absolutely, which is really exciting that there is a growing movement of organisations and professionals who are providing support, and that can range from a whole spectrum. So in Australia, Psychology for a Safe Climate do have a list of all the mental health professionals across Australia who are climate aware, in the sense that they are aware that what's happening not only in the climate but in the environment and with environmental threats can impact how we show up, our psychology, our emotional life. And so for people who are really feeling like they're carrying the burden of ecological grief very heavily, they can reach out to those practitioners for sessions, for counselling and support. Psychology for a Safe Climate also offer climate cafes, which are more community-oriented places for a kind of open dialogue about the feelings and thoughts that might be arising in us as we kind of witness some of these huge threats to beloved wildlife and places. And they're offered online and in person all around Australia.
Chloe, how are you feeling about all of this right now? I mean, you've been dealing with this kind of grief on a very one-to-one basis for quite some time now, you and your co-author on this, Claudia. Do you get overwhelmed by it all?
I definitely do. I definitely, I suppose, practice what I preach in terms of trying to notice how I'm feeling and listen to that quiet voice that is feeling really sad about the things that I witness, particularly in the news, but also in my daily life. And I guess being able to honor and acknowledge that is probably the first step that I try to take. And often many of us don't stop to notice. So being able to do that, I think, is the first step. I have a creative practice I find that using art and creativity to kind of honour the natural world is something that helps me notice, but also kind of channel some of the feelings I have into those practices.
Chloe, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on this today. We really appreciate you giving us some of your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Great conversation, great questions.
This might have been a lot. I totally understand. If you need to reach out to somebody though, if the feelings are getting too big or too much, please call Lifeline. Their number is 13 11 14. They are a wonderful bunch of humans and they absolutely want to listen to you and hear you because you're worth it. So at the risk of sounding like a beauty campaign, call them 13 11 14. But obviously I can't leave you in despair over our current ecological situation. So 2 stories this week might just have you feeling a little less sad. The lead researcher working on monitoring the Great Barrier Reef told us this week that they have observed small but promising signs of recovery after back-to-back coral bleaching events in recent years. Spared from the worst of the heat over the end of the 2025-26 summer, and with a late monsoon, sea temperatures have remained low enough for organisms to grow again. Also, if the thought of all those gorgeous little penguins on Phillip Island in Victoria being taken out by this virus just breaks your heart, there is right now a dedicated team rounding up as many of them as possible so they can be vaccinated. The CSIRO tested the jab on small native birds last year, so they know they can repurpose the vaccine that's usually used on poultry. Good luck, team. We are right behind you. Have a great day. Catch you tomorrow for the State and Territory Whip.